So the first one's quite an open question. What are your thoughts about Wānaka Airport?
Well, common sense says it's a no-brainer. We don't need that kind of development on Wānaka Airport. For me, the biggest thing is when you, and it seems ironic and hypocritical that you're talking about mass tourism and carbon footprint and climate change, and yet you want to build this monstrous airport in a beautiful, unique town that is celebrated for its beauty and its environment. So for me, this is just defying common sense and logic.
Great, thank you. What were the key learnings from the recent High Court ruling about Wānaka Airport in your view?
So I read up on that, and I just feel like it validates every community voice that when you believe in something and you've got the conviction and you've got the backing and you've got the facts, that you can take down those big organizations and those big entities and the status quo. Like, I love that a small voice has been able to challenge the status quo, where you get this patronizing attitude from, and I'll say it openly, from QLDC in this situation where community voice is minimized. For me, that just is such a David versus Goliath moment, where it feels like at the end of the day, the community feels validated and has a voice. So yeah, well done.
Thank you. And you said in your answer, I think, because this was my next very short question, you read the judgment, didn't you?
Yeah, no, I haven't read the full judgment, but
okay.
I've read the High Court ruling,
okay.
But you can ask me something about that.
Okay. How else do you inform yourself about airport issues in the district?
And that's been a concern for me, that council hasn't engaged in being media open. So what I don't like is that I don't get my information directly from the council. I don't like that council is not my first point of information on key issues, on little issues, on legislation changes, that I have to go to the media. And I don't know whether that's sensational reporting. I don't know if it's factual sometimes. I don't know whether that's media just trying to sell a point. My thought is that when it is an issue with regards to community investments, with regards to development in the community, your first source of information must be from QLDC. And what really bothered me when I was reading the High Court judgment is that I didn't see a lot of that on QLDC website. I actually saw more of that from probably the newspaper and Protect Wānaka, and that for me is a matter of concern.
Have you, or did you read the Martin Jenkins report?
Yes.
Okay. Who do you believe should determine the future evolution of Wānaka Airport?
There's no, and I mean this in not in a biased way. I think it's no one entity or one person, right? So this is something that's affecting the community, not just for now, but for our future generation. So how do you sit behind closed doors and make a big chunk of these decisions before this is even open for the public? So I believe this is a collaborative thing. You need to get your community involved. And in Wānaka's case, you've got this sounding voice with Protect Wānaka, where I believe it's a very open forum, because I've seen how you guys have, how this organization encourages new membership. You're very transparent about, if you've been accused of certain things, which is your negative campaigning thing that I looked at. So you've been open and transparent, and not just use information to, compel your position. So I like that. But I think no decision should be made behind closed doors unless the community has been thoroughly involved and engaged with it.
Thank you. That's very clear. What do you know about the Wānaka Airport Liaison Committee?
Again, I've read that from your website. We do need a voice. We do need for us to be able to, and not just one. So you got Protect Wānaka, and there might be some people who might completely disagree with where you stand, and I get that, which is why we need that kind of engagement, which is why we need those voices that can freely say, I don't agree with Protect Wānaka. I don't think it's good business. I completely agree with QLDC, but QLDC needs to be that functioning body that gets these voices together so we can have these open discussions.
Thank you. There's provision made for the Wānaka Airport Liaison Committee in the QLDC district plan, but it hasn't ever been established. So if elected, would you promote and support the establishment of the Wānaka Airport Liaison Committee?
100%. 100%, because apart from the Wānaka Airport issue, I just don't believe that Wānaka has a voice. I don't know if you know this, but I worked at QLDC and Lakes Environmental and many different councils. So my career has been working around councils in full-time capacities and smaller voice roles with governance and compliance. I believe Wānaka does not have the kind of representation it needs. So you can just reflect, and you can see that from the office that we've got on Ardmore Road, which is Ardmore Street, sorry, which is a small little office building. And yet we talk about project here in Queenstown, the downtown offices that we're going to have in Queenstown. The disparity is just baffling to me, considering Wānaka is one of our fastest growing regions. I don't understand the justification for having that kind of less involvement with Wānaka when we know that in a few years, if we don't treat Wānaka with the same kind of equality, that the issues that we have in Queenstown have taught us nothing. We've got an opportunity to make Wānaka a benchmark for tourism, a benchmark for communities, and we've made mistakes in Queenstown, and we don't want to repeat that. And Wānaka is nothing like Queenstown. Their needs are different. Identify, acknowledge, and action those. So when it comes back to the liaison committee, I would say 100%, because unless you have that kind of involvement, you just won't be able to cope with the inevitable and exponential growth that we're going to have in our region.
Thank you. You've probably answered the next question, but I'm going to ask it because everybody gets asked the same question. So what do you see as the key issues or considerations driving the airport's future?
I think I see a positive change from the community with regards to what they want. They've been very vocal and they've been very clear about that they're not happy with it. What I would like to see is for council to get a little more transparent, come on the board, get the ego out of this whole thing. And I don't even know whether it's ego or whether there are other factors that we don't even know about why they're not coming. I just don't like this whole, for me, the council is an extension of the community. So you're the voice, you're that condensed voice of the community that goes and bats on our behalf. What I don't like is the approach of the council disassociating themselves so much from the community that it almost seems like a private organization doing their own thing, and it's all about profits and development. Like, I honestly don't see council getting involved with what the community wants. The dissociation is just so unacceptable that things have to change. And this is why we need to stop protecting the status quo. We need to start looking at different options. We need to stop labeling when people start saying, hey, what about the community, or what about mass tourism, or what kind of people do we want to let in? Those are open discussions, so we need to stop labeling people going, oh, you're just being selfish, or you don't want to share your backyard. It's not about that. We are very proud of where we live. It's just that we don't want to sell our experience and our region short to our visitors even. They need to have that experience when they come here.
Perfect. What's your stance on carbon emissions, and what do you think QLDC should do specifically?
So I get a lot of comments on Facebook sometimes going, oh, you're one of those people. We thought, we would have one mayor, one councillor who's not involved with the climate change. I mean, I find it almost naive not to include sustainable tourism and climate change in every one of our policies. QLDC, like every other region, like every other place in New Zealand and globally, needs to have climate change and sustainable tourism as part of our policies. So I wouldn't even call it tourism anymore. I think sustainable tourism is the only way. That's the only way. It's not a special kind of tourism. It's the only kind of tourism that we should aim for. QLDC has a responsibility of implementing those changes, and you don't see that. So a prime example, obviously, is how they've treated the whole Wānaka Airport issue. But it's ironic to also see that they're against Terrace, which is exactly the same argument. It just doesn't favor Queenstown, I guess, and that's why you see QLDC being very vocal about that, but not very vocal about the Wānaka Airport.
Well, that leads perfectly on to the next question, which is what's your position on the proposed new Terrace Airport?
Again, I'm against it. With COVID, if we haven't learned that we need to start looking at things differently, we don't need that kind of tourism coming in. I think our USP for our region is our uniqueness. So we don't need flocks of people coming in. I think, and I work with a lot of tourist operators because I've got a business that works around tourism. I think, and I hear this from overseas people as well, where they have said to me, "Oh, we do want to come and visit Queenstown because it's so unique," or "We want to come and see Wānaka because it's just so out of this world." And unless we can keep that uniqueness, that exclusiveness, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, we are killing the golden goose. We are over-exploiting our resources so much that people are going to start noticing that we have compromised the integrity of our environment over development and mass tourism.
Great, thank you. The final of the 10 questions is, what do you see as the role of the Wānaka Community Board and where should it fit within council?
Again, I think, I think briefly a few months ago, I'd read about how there was, the voice for not having a Wānaka Community Board. I find that unacceptable. And that's because I feel like if you don't have enough representation from the community, you will lose investments in the community, which means there's a loss of community. When there's a loss of community, there's not going to be any investments in our region. So we will just look like another tourist spot. When we talk about economic diversification, people will want to invest in our region when they see a strong sense of community. I've got my son who grew up here, and I've got a daughter here, and I can see the disparity of when he was growing up and when my daughter is now growing up, where if you want certain activities, you have to actually move out of town. And for me, that's concerning as a parent, but it's also concerning as a community member. I would like to see more community-based investments because I honestly believe that will attract a lot of investors to invest in our community in a more thoughtful way, because they will put community first when they invest in our region.
Great, thank you. So there's a bonus question that we didn't tell you about, but it's a good one. Just want to give you a minute or two to say whatever you want to the people of Wānaka as a closing piece. I had a question, and they said, why haven't candidates come to Wānaka as much? And I wrote back to the person and I said, I actually feel inadequate in my campaigning because I've not had as many opportunities to interact with Wānaka. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm also a business owner, and I realize how short-staffed we are. So I would never feel comfortable walking into people's business at this time and going, hey, look, I'm running for mayor. I just feel that's very pompous, and it misses the point of your empathy to what businesses are going through right now. But the representation, like I've said, in Wānaka is not something I condone. I feel like there needs to be, so we've got about 8 forums here in Queenstown that I'm doing, and I've just been to only one in Havia. I've got the Ignite one coming. So when I actually got your email, Mark, it was exciting because that's the way you connect. And I'm not a politician, so I don't have that kind of exposure to Wānaka. So for me to be able to get my community voice and just show people what I am, I would love the opportunity to be able to be more involved with Wānaka
And if elected, that's actually going to be on my agenda, is to prioritize the needs of Wānaka, because I think far too long we've actually ignored what is one of our most contributing regions to our economy, but also to our cultural and our social aspects. So yeah, Wānaka needs that voice, and I'm definitely going to represent that.
So thank you very much for your time. I'm just going to stop the recording.